Practice Listening Test 1. Section 1. Community College Classes. You will hear a receptionist and a teacher talking about classes at a community college. Read the example.
Good evening. How may I help you?
My name's Amal Nouri. I'm a new teacher.
Nice to meet you, Amal. You're teaching Arabic, aren't you?
Spanish, actually. I'm from Argentina.
The answer is B. On this occasion only, the first part of the conversation is played twice. Before you listen again, you have 30 seconds to read questions 1 to 4.
Good evening. How may I help you?
My name's Amal Nouri. I'm a new teacher.
Nice to meet you, Amal. You're teaching Arabic, aren't you?
Spanish, actually. I'm from Argentina. My relatives moved there a long time ago. You'd be surprised how big the Arab community is in Latin America.
But Spanish isn't on tonight. It's tomorrow, Wednesday.
I know. I just thought I'd introduce myself. When I came for my interview, I only met the principal.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes, Trevor Andrews. I must say he made me feel welcome, especially since he speaks Spanish himself.
Trevor's a lovely guy. We're going to miss him when he leaves at the end of the term.
Oh, why is he leaving? Has he found another job?
No, he's retiring. He wants to spend more time with his grandchildren.
Right. He did mention them to me.
Did Trevor also mention that he likes to sit in on new teachers' classes, just for a few minutes? It's the policy of the college that new teachers are observed either by Trevor or by the vice principal. I'm sure it's in your contract.
Probably.
Don't worry, it's all quite informal. You won't need to submit a lesson plan. Actually, student feedback at the end of the term is taken more seriously.
I see.
One more piece of advice, Amal. Don't be upset about the fact that you'll start the term with 15 students but end up with 5. That's just what happens with evening classes. People sign up for these things without really knowing what's involved, or something else comes up on that night. The high dropout rate is no reflection on your teaching.
Thanks for the tip. Anyway, the real reason I'm here tonight is that I'd like to enroll in a class. I saw in the contract that teachers can take one class themselves, paying only 10% of tuition, which seems a pretty good deal.
Indeed. When I was teaching keyboarding skills, I did Korean and car maintenance. However, for a few courses, like life drawing, where students have to pay for a model, or cooking with seafood, where the ingredients are expensive, I'm afraid teachers can't pay only 10%. They have to pay the full fee.
Before you listen to the rest of the conversation, you have 30 seconds to read questions 5 to 10.
So, Amal, what would you like to do?
I'm interested in Sally Burton's class called Working with Wool. I read about her in the local paper.
Yes, she's very popular.
She made those amazing sculptures near the town hall. I'd no idea that wool could be used in such huge artworks. I'd always thought of it just in clothing or carpets.
Unfortunately, Sally's class is full. You see, she holds it in her studio, so she only accepts 7 students, and we've already had 7 enrollments. I could put you on the waiting list.
It's all right. My second choice was watercolor painting on Tuesdays and Fridays. Yikes! There's a class tonight.
Kostia's class is also popular, but someone's just canceled, so there is a place for you.
Great.
For the first few nights, he's in room 14, but later in the term, when it's lighter in the evening, he takes his class on excursions to the river. There were some gorgeous paintings of the river in the end-of-term exhibition last year.
Sounds good. By the way, where will my class be tomorrow?
I'm not sure yet. We've had to make a few changes, but I'll give you a call or send you a text when I know.
Okay.
I don't think I've got your phone number.
It's 0212 064 993.
993 or 553?
993.
Thanks. Lovely to meet you, Amarl. I hope you'll enjoy your time with us.
You now have 30 seconds to check your answers. That is the end of Section 1.
Section 2. You will hear a local radio broadcast about the Rivendell City Theatre. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
And here on Radio Rivendell, we have Lynn Rawley, the Public Relations Officer of our own Rivendell City Theatre. Hello, Lynn.
Hello.
Now, the theatre is reopening soon after its 3-year redevelopment program, isn't it?
That's right, and there are a lot of improvements. The first thing people will see when they go in is that the foyer has been repainted in the original green and gold. Then the box office has been reoriented with its own access from the side of the building instead of through the foyer, which means it can be open longer hours and has more space too. The shop that used to be in the foyer, which sold books and CDs, is the one part of the redevelopment which isn't yet complete. The plan is to find new premises for it near the theatre, and we've had difficulty finding somewhere suitable. We hope to reopen the shop in the next few months.
Will audiences find any difference in the auditorium?
Yes, we've increased the legroom between the rows. This means that there are now fewer seats, but we're sure audiences will be much happier. And we've installed air conditioning so it won't get so hot and stuffy. We already had a few seats which were suitable for wheelchair users, and now there are twice as many, which we hope will meet demand. Something else that will benefit audiences is the new lifts. The two we used to have were very small and slow. They've now gone, and we've got much more efficient ones.
Anything for the performers?
Yes, we've made a number of improvements backstage. The small, dark dressing rooms we used to have been converted into 2 large, airy rooms, so they're much more comfortable now. And the state-of-the-art electronic sound and lighting systems have been installed.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Okay, so what's the first play that audiences can see when the theatre reopens?
We've got a very exciting production of Peter Shaffer's Royal Hunt of the Sun, which is currently touring the country. That starts on October the 13th and runs till the 19th. We're experimenting a bit with the time the curtain goes up. We used to start all our performances at 7:30, but that made it difficult for people to go home by public transport. So instead, we're beginning at 7, because at 9:45, when it finishes, there are still buses running. Tickets are already selling fast. The Friday and Saturday performances sold out almost immediately, and in fact now there are only tickets for Monday and Thursday.
How much are they?
We've introduced a simpler price structure. Ticket prices used to range from £6 to £30, but now they're all £18. They're available from the box office, in person, by phone, fax or post, or online.
Okay, Lynn. Now, if you'd like to give the contact details for the theater so that our listeners
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3.
Section 3. You will hear the Director of Studies in an English Language Centre and a student representative talking about their self-access centre. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Hi, Yun. As you know, I've asked you here today to discuss the future of our self-access centre. We have to decide what we want to do about this very important resource for our English language students. So, can you tell me what the students think about this?
Well, from the students' point of view, we would like to keep it. The majority of students say that they enjoy using it because it provides a variation on the classroom routine, and they see it as a pretty major component of their course. But we would like to see some improvements to the equipment, particularly the computers. There aren't enough for one each at the moment, and we always have to share.
Well, yes, the teachers agree that it is a very valuable resource. But one thing we have noticed is that a lot of the students are using it to check their personal emails. We don't want to stop you students using it, but we think the computers should be used as a learning resource, not for emails. Some of us also think that we could benefit a lot more by relocating the Self-Access Centre to the main university library building. How do you think the students would feel about that, Yun?
Well, the library is big enough to incorporate the Self-Access Centre, but it wouldn't be like a class activity anymore. Our main worry would be not being able to go to a teacher for advice. I'm sure there would be plenty of things to do, but we really need teachers to help us choose the best activities.
Well, there would still be a teacher present and he or she would guide the activities of the students. We wouldn't just leave them to get on with it.
Yes, but I think the students would be much happier keeping the existing setup. They really like going to the Self-Access Centre with their teacher and staying together as a group to do activities. If we could just improve the resources and facilities, I think it would be fine. Is the cost going to be a problem?
It's not so much the expense that I'm worried about, and we've certainly got room to do it, but it's the problem of timetabling a teacher to be in there outside class hours. If we're going to spend a lot of money on equipment and resources, we really need to make sure that everything is looked after properly. Anyway, let's make some notes to see just what needs doing to improve the centre.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
Now, what about the computers? I think it might be a good idea to install some new models. They would take up a lot less room, and so that would increase the workspace for textbooks and so on.
That would be great. It is a bit cramped in there at times.
What about other resources? Do you have a list of things that the students would like to see improved?
Yes, one of the comments that students frequently make is that they find it difficult to find materials that are appropriate for their level, especially reading resources. So I think we need to label them more clearly.
Well, that's easy enough. We can get that organised very quickly. In fact, I think we should review all of the study resources as some of them are looking a bit out of date.
Definitely. The CD section especially needs to be more current. I think we should get some of the ones that go with our latest course books and also make multiple copies.
Good. Now, I was also thinking about some different materials that we haven't got in there at all. What do you think of the idea of introducing some workbooks? If we break them up into separate pages and laminate them, they'd be a great resource. The students could study the main course book in class and then do follow-up practice in the Self-Access Centre.
That sounds good.
OK, now finally we need to think about how the room is used. I'll have to talk to the teachers and make sure we can all reach some agreement on a timetable to supervise the centre after class. But we also need to think about security too, especially if we're going to invest in some new equipment.
What about putting in an alarm?
Good idea. The other thing I'd like to do is talk to our technicians and see whether we could somehow limit the access to email. I really don't want to see that resource misused.
What about if we agree to only use it before and after class?
Yes, that would be fine. OK, anyway, that's great for now. We'll discuss it further when we've managed to sort.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4.
Section 4. The Benefits of Literature. You will hear a lecture on the benefits of reading literature. Before you listen, you have 45 seconds to read questions 31 to 40.
Last week, my 16-year-old neighbour asked me to look over her essay on the value of reading. I read the text and was impressed by her elegant prose. But there was one glaring omission. Most of her essay was about how we read or why we read. In my opinion, how or why is far less important than what we read. No one today would deny that reading improves cognitive intelligence. I bet the top 3 students here are also the 3 biggest readers. However, a growing number of experts attribute literary fiction to a reader's enhanced capacity for emotional as well as cognitive intelligence. But what are emotional intelligence and literary fiction? Actually, emotional intelligence is a phrase popularized by the media. Academics like me prefer the term theory of mind, or TOM. TOM is the ability to attribute mental states, beliefs, intentions, desires, pretense, and knowledge to oneself and others, and to understand that others have states different from one's own. Notable deficits in TOM occur in people with schizophrenia, attention deficit, and autism spectrum disorders, or with neurotoxicity due to drug or alcohol abuse. What is literary fiction? Well, it's writing considered as classic, winning widespread acclaim, translated into many languages, and enduring over time. Think Jane Austen, Anton Chekhov, or F. Scott Fitzgerald, and people like Ala Aswani, Paulo Coelho, or Alice Munro. The vast majority of books, however, are not literary. They're non-fiction or popular fiction. Non-fiction deals with facts, and popular fiction with formulaic stories. True, in pop fiction, readers go on an emotional journey, often in exotic settings, but while events may be dramatic, the external and internal lives of characters are predictable. This means readers' expectations remain unchallenged. Their view of the world is intact. By contrast, literary fiction focuses on the psychological states of characters and on their complex interpersonal relationships. Some writers adopt a technique called stream of consciousness, in which they minutely describe what is occurring in a character's head. Others only allude to a character's state of mind. In the first instance, readers may be exposed to ways of perceiving the world quite different from their own. In the second, their need to interpret intentions or motivations expands their emotional problem-solving capacity. So, despite being set in the real, often humdrum world, literary works defy expectations by challenging prejudices and undermining stereotypes. 5 experiments by the New York academics David Kidd and Emanuele Castano have confirmed this. They invited hundreds of online participants to read extracts from non-fiction, popular fiction, or literary fiction, or not to read anything at all. On cognitive and emotional tests, Kidd and Castano demonstrated that readers of literary fiction performed better compared to readers of other genres, or those who did not read. It's conceivable that including literary fiction in the daily routine of prisons, as well as in schools and universities, would bear fruit. It is already known that those in the correctional system who receive credits towards liberal arts college degrees survive better on release. Medicating children with autism or ADHD has been fashionable, but having them read literature may improve their conditions. There are some lesser benefits to reading literary fiction. Firstly, it encourages discipline and connectedness. Discipline because the language or style may be complex, and a length of time is needed to finish it. Connectedness because readers identify strongly with great characters. Think about a generation of children who read the 7 Harry Potter books, devoting around 40 hours to them. An equivalent amount of time spent watching a TV series would not generate an equivalent emotional response. Secondly, neuroscientists in 2013 discovered enhanced neural activity in subjects who read fine literature daily. Those who read just before falling asleep were more likely to waken soothed and focused, unlike TV viewers. So why aren't schools, universities and prisons insisting on more literary fiction? Why aren't sales of Nobel Prize winners soaring? Some say life is too demanding. Common Sense Media, a San Francisco-based non-profit organization, produced a report called Why Aren't Teens Reading? It showed that currently 27% of 17-year-olds read for pleasure almost every day, whereas in 1984, 31% did. 30 years ago, 9% of 17-year-olds said they seldom or never read for pleasure. By 2014, those figures had tripled to 27%. Many respondents attribute this change to needing time for other life skills, but it is my argument that, as complexity increases, the young become more adept at dealing with it when they read literary fiction. So, did I suggest my neighbour redraft her essay? No. I gave her a copy of The Little Prince, a French classic from 1943, and asked her to pass it on to a friend when she'd finished.
That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to your answer sheet.